Hello everyone. We are back with another Monday IG Live. Today I will be joined by Miss Emily, and we're going to be talking to you guys today about why you're not improving in between shows, talk about why it's important to have a productive and extended off season, especially if you have a lot of growing to do within the sport of bodybuilding. So we're going to talk about her off season, some of the things that she's doing. I'll talk about my extended off season, and obviously we'll open up the floor to any potential questions you guys might have, depending upon what it is regarding maybe your own potential off season, or maybe kind of getting through the mind fuck about gaining body fat, really whatever questions that you guys have. But I'm going to invite Emily in, and we will get this party with us here, as Instagram usually likes me to jump through hoops when it comes to lives. Hey, first time for everything. Love it. How are you?
Yay, this is my first IG Live, so that's a
That is so funny. I feel like I have popped so many people's IG Live cherries. It's a ton of fun, and don't be nervous. Like it's a lot of fun.
I'm excited. Thank you for asking me to be on here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a really good topic planned. But before we kind of dive in, let's hear a little bit more about you, your competitive career, family life, what you do for work, and we can kind of dive in from there.
Yeah. So I live in Oklahoma. I am an online fitness coach for training and nutrition. I also do marketing for a supplement company and then do a couple of various accounts for social media management. So a little bit of everything. But I am married. Like I said, I live here, no kids, two cats. We're total cat people. I know you are. I think you're a cat person too, right? Yes. Yes, they'll probably jump in here at any moment. They're
Same.
lurking at somewhere. But yeah, so I am a bikini competitor. I have done 6 shows, I believe, by now. I wish that I could say I had done none and was just starting off, but they've all it served a purpose, got me to where I am now. So I'm currently deep in my off season. I will be here until my coach tells me that I'm not anymore. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah.
Love it, love it. So when was your last show?
So I competed. I did 4 shows, which is a little crazy, but in 2022. So my last one was October of 2022.
Okay, so you've had, about two years and some change then kind of like under your
Yeah.
belt. Got it. And then so you said you did six shows, but you did 4 shows 2022. So what was the time period between 2022 and your first 2 shows?
So I did my first one I believe it's 2017,
Okay.
and then 2019, and then yeah, 2022.
Okay, so you essentially had 2 year off seasons in between.
Yeah.
Got you. So what did those off seasons look like, or maybe what do you wish they would have looked like?
They were not very well spent. I feel like I stayed way too lean during
Okay.
those. I was not training to the capacity that I am now. I feel like just now within like the last year, I've really like pushed it with my training to actually be training at the intensity that I should be. I thought that I was doing well during those off seasons before, but none of that was conducive to actually building muscle.
Yeah, yeah, that's something where it's like I have like a list of bullet points here that I was kind of racking my brain around, where it's like specifically if we're talking about like bikini competitors, I do feel like the smaller muscled girls get it in their head that they have to stay small because they're in a smaller division. And therefore some of the hangups that we see is they're not eating enough, they're not training hard enough, and they're also not really taking on a growth mindset, and they want to keep themselves small, not understanding or maybe not fully realizing their capacity of bodybuilding, right? And regardless of whatever division, even if you're fit model, you still need to have a baseline level of physique, and especially in bikini, depending upon how far you want to take, your competitive journey, it requires muscle mass. In order to grow muscle mass, we need enough food, enough protein, preferably a surplus to actually accrue tissue outside of, quote unquote recomp, and then hard effective training. And then to complicate matters, if you're just, on your own and you're not working with a coach, looking into recovery variables as well, which it sounds like based on your first 2 off seasons, maybe there are some things that you didn't quite hit.
Yes. And I wanted to comment, somebody commented on here, 2015 was my first show. You are correct, Rachel, because I did that first show with her. So I was off on that date. So
Gotcha.
2015. But I literally came from zero muscle. Like I had
Yeah.
nothing. I didn't play sports growing up. I have never played organized sports like that,
Hmm.
which is surprising to a lot of people. I'm 6 foot tall. So I'm very, very tall.
Damn, you're a woman. I
Yes.
love it.
Yes. And I always tell my parents, I mean, I get asked pretty much daily if I go anywhere. They're like, did you play volleyball? Did you play basketball? And I'm like, no, I did not. I did not. I wish my parents had probably put me in something like that at an earlier age because maybe I would have gotten good at it. But I have no coordination when it comes to things like that. And so that just, I had zero, genetics are not on my side. My parents gave me a lot of really great things, but not in the muscle category. So
Mhm.
yeah, when I got on stage for the first time, like I had absolutely no business being up there. And it was just something that, I thought I would never do, not having ever coming from a background of playing sports or being on stage of any kind. But it was something that I kind of started. It was like right around when Instagram kind of became a thing. I was started following people on there, learning more about the sport because I knew nothing about it prior to all of that. And it was just like if I don't ever try it, it'll be something that I regret not trying. But at that time, I had no business being up there.
Sure, sure. I feel like a lot of competitors do say that, but looking back on it, you still need to at least try because much like you said you wish your parents would have put you in sports, but you would never would have known if you would have liked, t-ball or volleyball or golf if they like didn't even put you in a sport to begin with. So I do think it's important to, yes, you should like not just hop into a show for shits and kicks to see if you even like bodybuilding without truly understanding what bodybuilding is, but a lot of that athlete maturation process does come with putting in the consistent reps and seeing what it is to become a bodybuilder and focusing on the process of bodybuilding, not just the end result, the end goal of competing, right? So, kind of thinking about the difference between being process oriented and being, kind of goal oriented in that respect. But when it comes to the off seasons that you did have, did you work with a coach during your off season or did you only have a coach when you were on or in prep?
No, so I always worked with a coach. I've ever since prior to that first show, I started off as a lifestyle client and then moved into competition prep, but I have had a coach the entire time.
Got you. Got you. So,
Yeah.
how did your off seasons look different between like your first six shows and now that you're in your off season with your current coach? Like, what are some key things that you are maybe taking away or taking notes from when it comes to the differences in those off seasons and how your physique is following suit?
Yeah. I mean, kind of like you said, focusing on not trying to stay small.
Mm.
That's something that, I always was that leaner, smaller person, especially for my height. I'm always been that tiny girl, and getting away from that, getting not so fixated on the number on the scale has been something that I've just recently learned within this past, year and a half of this off season, and being okay with that, being okay with hitting those scary numbers. I mean, right now I'm up 40 pounds from my lowest stage weight that I had in 2022. And 40 pounds, like that's scary. That sounds like a lot. I mean, that's a little bit, more conservative on me because I do have so much
Right.
room to put it. So yeah, that's going to look different on different people, but getting away from that mindset of being afraid of that number, being willing to eat. I'm eating the most food that I ever have. I'm the smartest about it. I feel like when I still do, I've never been like a meal plan person.
Sure.
I kind of create my own meal plan out of my
Hmm.
macros, but I do that a lot smarter now. It's not so much, how you hear people, the
Yeah.
IIFYM and all of that. Yeah, I'm not just filling my diet full of a bunch of crap because I can. And I feel like I took too much advantage of that earlier on in previous preps. And then training, learning how to train. Like I thought that I was training, with really good intensity prior. And this is the first time of my life that I've ever actually truly trained to failure. And
Yep.
I'm still learning how to train to failure. I'm not there by any means, but it's come so drastically far from where it was
Right.
before.
And I don't know your background with your first like one or two coaches when you were like doing your first six shows, but for me, I also thought I was training hard because I had a lot of training volume.
Mhm.
We're talking like, three sets being like the minimum, upwards of like 6 to 7 sets, and that was across like a lot of exercises, right? So like, maybe we would have a lot of supersets or giant sets or whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm training really hard because I'm spending, 2.5, 3 hours in the gym, not including cardio time. and
Mhm.
then coupled with not eating enough, coupled with then doing too much cardio or maybe too intense cardio in the off season, coupled with high steps, coupled with, a poor mindset around my relationship with myself, food, bodybuilding, kind of my whole life, if I'm being honest.
Mhm.
And then I think a big mistake that competitors get caught up with is this idea of chasing, national qualifications, chasing pro cards. And it's not that the pursuit is what is unhealthy, it is what you're willing to kind of give up in that like pursuit. And so I'm thinking about like suffering needlessly, right? Like having that hardcore mentality, black and white, 0 to 100, no room for flexibility, no room for adaptation, and especially in your off season, no room for fun. Like being like 100% all the time. Not saying that like you don't take your programming and your training seriously. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean like no room for hobbies, no room for free meals or date nights with your significant other, like no room for anything else but bodybuilding. And the reason why that sounds maybe great and the quickest path for whatever your end goal is as a competitor, you're actually missing out on life. And quite frankly, you're missing the point because you're going to be very short-sighted. And one of the key aspects to having a productive off season outside of all the variables Emily and I have already chatted about is making sure that you have longevity and enough time in your off season, right? And for me, I've been in my off season for 5 years. I have not competed since 2019. And much like Emily, I had no business stepping on stage in the first place, but I wanted to see if I liked bodybuilding. So I did do two shows, and the second show I really shouldn't have fucking done. Not because like, I couldn't afford to do it, but like my first feedback in my first show was great stage presentation, but you need to grow.
Mhm.
So it's like if your feedback is, hey, do the bodybuilding, and you don't build, like your second feedback isn't going to be, oh, hey, great improvements.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, especially at that time, I was a natural competitor. So it's like, okay, well, we're really not going to be making improvements in a month's time. So it is really important to understand when you get feedback from your first show and taking that criticism and that feedback into account. If you need to grow, pack up shop, do the bodybuilding aspect.
Yeah. I think that that's really important. And I was one of those people too that I was speaking about like going on national stages. Like I remember telling myself in 2022, I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how I do. If I qualify, like I'm just going to go to nationals just to do it for the
Just
experience. And I'm
for the
so,
experience,
yeah.
right?
And I'm so happy that I didn't qualify,
Yeah.
that I got basically my ass handed to me because it was a big reality check that I needed. Because it's like, you aren't ready. You aren't ready to step on this stage. Like, get off of it, do the work that it needs, and then maybe one day you'll be able to get
Like
there.
imagine just holding like $3,000 in your hands and then lighting it on fire.
Yeah,
Like
you might as well.
that is how like literally how useless it would have been for either one of us because
Yeah.
like you, it's misplaced excitement because you
Yeah.
loved show day, right? You loved competing, and regardless of how hard your prep was, you fell in love with the competitive nature. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would say I wish more people fell in love with wanting to bring their best because that at the end of the day is what bodybuilding is. It's continuing to level up your game, continuing to be better, demanding more from yourself and getting more out of it. And then also, like, hate to sound philosophical, but when you demand more from yourself, that bleeds into other networks, whether it's your job, whether if you're a parent, whether you're a spouse, a daughter, whatever, like that bleeds into other areas of your life. And that can be really, really good for the people around you, including yourself. But when it comes to the off season, the mindset where people usually fail and don't actually improve between shows, regardless of the amount of time they take off, is they're treating their off season as like off. So they're like only working with a coach when it's time to prep, right? So therefore, their training, their diet, they're winging it. They're winging it and hoping and praying for the best. And while that may work for 1% of the population, Emily and I, like I said, we love our parents. We got a lot of great freaking traits from them. Genetics of building muscle wasn't one of them. That's the real reality for a lot of competitors, and that's fine. But when you realize that's your reality, you need to understand that your goals and your actions either produce the physique that you want or they don't, right? Or in the off season, competitors really struggle with putting on body fat and they become addicted to staying small and staying lean. And while yes, that post that went viral on my end, people were like, yeah, but you shouldn't gain 30 fucking pounds either because then that's unhealthy. I'm like, okay, I never said get morbidly
Yeah.
obese, but you have to understand that your extra small should not be your off-season body weight. Like it's okay to fit into a medium. Like in fact, you probably should because if you're still being in your extra small like shorts, honey, your booty probably ain't growing. You know what I'm saying? So it's really important to understand there's life outside of competing. And while yes, when you are wanting to be a competitive bodybuilder, you want to compete and show off your work, it is really vital to your long-term success that you treat your off season in a very similar manner as you did your contest prep to grow muscle, to accrue that time, to accrue that density, to refine your skills and build up your confidence as an athlete. Because again, training, nutrition, all of these things are actually hidden skills that need to be nurtured and developed with the right guidance and the right support network. But if you are constantly identifying as this skinny little miss, that's a big problem when it comes to actually being competitive in bodybuilding. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, and that's something that got me hung up in my past seasons too, is I would get to that point where I put on some extra weight and I was uncomfortable. And then at that time, I was with a coach who all I had to say was, I'm uncomfortable and we do a mini cut.
Mm,
And I knew that. And I took advantage of that at that time. And that's not doing you any good. That's not doing you good. You have to be able to push past that and realize that mini cut's not going to help you in any way.
mhm,
You know, like I'm a perfect example too of what you said. Like I'm up 40 pounds from where I was at my lowest stage weight. I'm not obese by any means. I'm not comfortable most days, and my body fat is definitely higher than I would maybe want it to be. But I'm also probably not at the highest weight that I'm going to be because I still have
mhm.
muscle to put on. And I'm going to stay in this season and not cut back. And I don't, I think that's for the better of my body composition overall. It's not an unhealthy phase to be in.
Exactly. And I do think a lot of people don't truly understand what an off season could and maybe even should look like. And it's because of weird coaching, poor experiences, whatever, in terms like bulking, where they like see that off-season picture of Jay Cutler, like just like so fat, where you're like, I didn't even realize that was Jay Cutler. You know what I'm saying? But like, especially if we're looking at the bikini division, like whether you do natural or enhanced, it is going to look very similar in terms of still creating a slight surplus to encourage muscle tissue accrual while making sure we are training hard and training smart, not training 6 7 days a week and oh, on some days I'm going to eat X amount but then I'm feeling a little fluffy and bloated, so I'm going to pull things back. Like consistency is going to be key to your success when it comes to building that muscle tissue. And whenever you feel a little uncomfortable, pushing back against your brain, right? It's something where you see a new high on the scale. What are you telling yourself? Oh, I'm fat. No, you're not fat. You have body fat. You have fat, water, skin, hair, poop, food, muscle. Like you have so much more than just the number on the scale. But a lot of the times it's that mental work and that inner work that needs to be done, which is why I do think that having those tough conversations with your coach and then also working with a therapist that understands the nature of what you're trying to do is vital to your long-term success as an athlete. And again, having productive off seasons, because like you mentioned, if every time you got uncomfortable it was mini cut, every time you enter into a mini cut you are taking away growth potential. Now, that does not mean that mini cuts do not serve their purpose. In the grand scheme of my 5.5 years, we had intentional building surplus phases. And when it was time that the body fat and my body was like, hey, I'm getting kind of tired, we would hold things there, solidify what I built, and clean things up. And so, to someone that doesn't understand bodybuilding, that might look like, yo yo dieting, but it's the intention behind properly programmed growth phases, holding patterns, and then also yes, cleanup phases or mini cuts when they are needed based on body composition, insulin sensitivity, training, all these other feedback markers that we don't really need to get into. But the important thing is there should be intention behind your programming for your long term success.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
totally. And another thing I was going to bring up is making sure that you're healthy
Mhm.
in off seasons, because my weight's up right now, but I guarantee you I'm the healthiest that I have ever been, because I feel like that was something else that held me back in my prior off seasons, is that I didn't really pay attention to my health. I never got blood work done. I never had anybody telling me to do it. And at that time, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And I didn't have a cycle for 3 years. I was on birth control for like 16 plus years.
Mhm.
My thyroid was a wreck, and I have since corrected all those things, and I'm finally growing. I'm finally seeing that progress because I truly am healthy on the inside.
Absolutely. Yeah. Health is going to be that foundational standard, regardless of wherever you're at in bodybuilding. And I do think it's important to note, as bodybuilders, we push the envelope. Like, if we look at the spectrum of health and fitness, like, bodybuilding is very extreme. We are extreme in our off season, especially if you are going enhanced, and we're also extreme in the idea of contest prep, right? Like, you don't get to that low level of body fat percentage not doing something extreme. And it's important to understand that those have ramifications. They have consequences. The bill comes due. But like Emily said, it's important to have that baseline health for productive growth seasons and growth phases, because if you don't have the bare minimum foundation of your health, like, we are missing out on the ability to stack athletic goals on top of that. And yeah, some people, they might be able to like either skirt by on good genetics, or make a little bit of progress to justify like maybe not correcting what they ideally should be. But at the end of the day, as athletes, when we demand so much from our bodies, like, why not give it what it needs for optimal health, therefore optimal growth? And what that looks like for some individual is going to look like that for every other person, because we do have all unique needs based on the context of our division, our life, where we're currently at in terms of our bodybuilding journey. But it is important not to neglect those key markers.
Yeah. And to listen to your body whenever, things are off, because I kind of always fell back on that, oh, I'm just a hard gainer, it just takes a lot for me to put on muscle. Well, yeah, it does for most people. It's not easy for anybody, but I was holding myself back by not checking on all those other things and making sure that those other things were in line, because it's a lot easier to do that now.
Absolutely. I mean, anyone's going to be a hard gainer if you don't have a baseline of health.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's going to be fucking hard to gain muscle. And then, to even to that point, if you're having a hard time seeing changes in your physique, you're going to feel really low and disappointed with your efforts, and therefore you're going to be like, oh, well, I can't grow muscle. I just need to stay lean then,
Yeah.
right? And so then you're backtracking even further, because you're failing to find the root cause of why you're not growing. And a lot of that can be due to improper programming, or poor coaching, or maybe not even having a coach in the first place. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be self-coached. I mean, I coached myself during my years, from like being obese to being skinny fat. But at some point, you have to understand there's likely going to be a limitation to your knowledge. Not that you aren't smart, not that you aren't capable, but it's the ability to bring yourself and push yourself to where you want to go as a physique athlete, and also understanding your limitation when it comes to the emotional bias that you have with how you view yourself and how you speak to yourself, because that's something that like is really hard for, I would say, 95% of people to actually coach themselves to a high level without giving into like how they perceive themselves and their daily emotional fluctuations.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. It's just like, I'm a coach. I can tell people to do things all day, but then it's, if I'm relying on myself to tell myself to do certain things, I'm not going to do it, because there is that emotional bias there. I see myself every day. I have that emotional relationship with myself, and with coaching you can't have that. You have to have that unbiased opinion on things.
Mhm. Absolutely. Honestly, that at the end of the day, it's like, when it comes to coaching, that teamwork is invaluable. Like, there's just so many different areas that you're able to grow as an athlete when you have someone taking care of you and guiding you in the right direction, that does actually take into account your biofeedback, that does request routine lab work to make sure that as we push more of your body and demand more from you and your efforts, that like your health continues to go in the right direction that it should be, without declining. Because there are some bodies that are much more resilient than others, but at the end of the day, the bill is always going to come due. right? And whether it comes to you now or in a few years from now, like you want to make sure that your time in bodybuilding served a good purpose and you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish within reason. Like, I'm sorry, not all of us are going to turn pro. As much as it is a very nice, genuine goal, as much as we want to be professionals and be leaders of the sport, like it's just not in the cards for the majority of athletes. But still pushing yourself and reaching whatever you could accomplish in your time as an athlete, I think that is very important as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's something that I'm really excited for whenever I do happen to step back on stage. And I won't do that until I know that I am truly bringing my best, because I feel like I almost need that. It's like a personal like vindication for myself, because I see what I brought to the stage prior. And honestly, it's embarrassing. It's not, I'm proud of myself because, I did progress over those years, but like I know nowhere near came close to the potential that I know that I have. And so it's like, I'm not going to do that again until I know that I can prove that to myself. And yeah, winning a pro card would be awesome. Do I think that that's maybe in the cards for me? Probably not, if I'm being realistic about things, but I for damn sure know that I can, completely blow the last girl that I brought onto the stage
Mhm.
out of the water.
Exactly. And I know there are some like bodybuilding zealots, and I used to be this person, and it's kind of embarrassing that I was, where it's like, it's not you versus you because you still have competition. It's like, no shit. Like, let's look at any fucking sport, whether it's football to NASCAR, like you're going to be competing against other people. That's what makes it a sport, right? But when it comes to bodybuilding, and yeah, you have teams because coaches have team, but like, you have teammates, but especially if you're in the same fucking height division, girl, that's your competition. So there needs to be a line and a line in the sand or some type of understanding that like you want better for yourself and will do whatever you need to do to be successful versus like doing like everything that you can versus like all it
Yeah.
takes, right? Where it's like you're kind of being fueled by either like self-love and self-respect versus self-hatred. And as someone that fueled, her first bodybuilding, career show with a lot of hatred and a lot of doubt and a lot of insecurities versus growing into who I am today. And again, being okay with taking 5 years away from the stage because I had a lot of bullshit to work on. I had a lot of muscle to grow. I had a lot of emotional maturing that I needed to do. I needed to make sure I was doing this for the right reasons, especially because I was a coach. So,
Mhm.
in order for me to demand more from my athletes, I needed to demonstrate leadership and true character development before I could lead effectively,
Yeah.
right? And so, I would not ask anything of my athletes that I would not first do myself when it comes to how they body build. And a lot of that shows empathy as well, because, like, I can tell you that self hatred, yeah, it burns really fucking hot for a really short period of time, but then you end up hating life and, wanting to blame bodybuilding. And dude, bodybuilding is amazing. It is an amazing sport filled with so much potential for just your growth as a human being if you do it with the right lens on. But I feel like a lot of people just see the stage glam, the hair, the suit, and they get those rose colored glasses where they're like, oh, that's what bodybuilding is. And it's like, no, no, no. That's what the one show day, the one day that you compete and you spend thousands of dollars on all of the stuff to look like that, that's
Mhm.
just one day. But the real growth and the real love of bodybuilding comes from showing up for yourself every damn day, whether that's your steps, your cardio, your water, your supplements, your training, your diet, yada, yada, yada. And a big thing is making sure you remember that you are someone outside of the sport of bodybuilding to make sure you can stay in the sport of bodybuilding even longer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And you truly have to love the process of getting there, because it's not worth it to step on stage one day if you are miserable for 16 to 20 weeks before that. Like, what's the point in doing it? It's not all it's cracked up to be if you're not enjoying it to some extent. That's not to say it's not going to be hard and days aren't going to be a struggle, but in the big grand scheme of things, you have to enjoy what you're doing.
Exactly. And that's something that I even mentioned in my group chat with my own athletes is like, you're going to suffer. That's inevitable. But you want to make sure you're suffering for the right stuff,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of good suffering, and then there's a lot of needless suffering. So it's learning to weed out what's needless and focus on like what is the stuff that's going to make you feel accomplished, that's going to help you get from A to Z in a timely manner that makes you look back on your time as a bodybuilder proud that you were competitive, that you did compete in the bikini division. Because even though we don't want to think about it right now, there is going to be one day where you look at your suit, you look at your heels, and you're like, it's time to be done. And you're going to sell them, or, I don't know, maybe you make a fucking shadow box. I don't know. But those suits are expensive. You might want to sell them. But what I'm saying is there's going to be a time where you no longer want to dedicate a portion of your life pie chart to being a competitive athlete. Not that you won't have like some level of like bodybuilding already programmed in your life, because it is very much a lifestyle. It's just going to not be as big of a priority. So you want to make sure you enjoy the time that you have in it and make the most of whatever that you can during your experience.
Yeah, I totally agree.
hmm So my question to you is, what do you love about your current off season?
I love currently how strong I'm getting. I've been lifting some weights that, thank you, some weights that I never thought that I would ever lift in my entire life. And they may not be a lot to some people, but they're a hell of a lot to me. And it's gratifying. I mean, it feels amazing to go into the gym and prove to myself that I can do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. There's something that I like to tell my athletes when it comes to like certain biofeedback markers and numbers in general, because a lot of the times it is number driven that can drive stress and stimulation. But when it comes to things like maybe fasted blood glucose, body weight, I don't know if you guys some do circumference measurements, but like those are numbers for me. Those are my numbers. Those are my numbers so I can see what's happening to your
yeah.
body, right? Your numbers are your logbook. I want you to take accountability and ownership over those numbers, because those numbers should matter to you. You should see that you're getting stronger, that you're progressing, that we are doing what we need to do in the gym. That is so vital and important to your long-term success. But when it comes to like the numbers of your clothing size or the scale number, it's not that you can't communicate you're being uncomfortable or you are uncomfortable to your coach, but it's how you say it. Like, hey, listen, like, I'm uncomfortable, but I know we have a job to do. Because I think that that communication is really important to have that level of trust and vulnerability, but also understanding that emotions can just be emotions and thoughts can just be thoughts without letting them get in the way of your long-term progress.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about having a coach in the off season too,
Hmm.
because I don't have to worry about all those things. Like I fill out my check-in sheet and that's on my coach. I have to worry about what I do outside of check-ins.
Hmm.
That's what matters the most.
Absolutely. So you had kind of two ish off seasons,
Hmm.
ish. We'll call them ish off
Yeah.
seasons. What do you wish that past Emily would have heard from future Emily when it comes to off seasons?
To stay in that off season, to stay in that off season, to suck it up and be uncomfortable and get past those numbers that, were scary for you to see, and to truly make progress, because I ultimately held myself back
Mm.
and I wasted a lot of time. I mean, 2022, I shouldn't have stepped on stage at all. And I spent 10 months in a prep, 10 months that yeah, 10 months that, I mean, I was
Yes.
pretty much in prep from New Year's, from January until the last show, the end of October. And so I could have been building for 10 months and I would have had that much more muscle now
Bitch, you
had
could
I
have
just
been
not.
living for 10
I
months. That's miserable.
know, I know. Thankfully, I mean, I hit a point where I was kind of like reversing up because I was so lean. I didn't need to
Sure.
get any leaner. But that was the other thing too. I got frustrated with is like once I got so lean, I still didn't have that body that I wanted because I didn't have that muscle built. And I wish that that's something that a lot of people understood more, is that you can diet down, you can be as lean as you want, but if you don't have that base of muscle, you're never going to look like what you think you're going to look like when you get that lean.
Exactly. Exactly. And I will say, as I hate to call myself a veteran because one, that sounds arrogant. And two, it's like I've only competed fucking twice. So it's like I'm not a veteran in the sport of bodybuilding, but I would like to give myself a little pat on the back about being a veteran in my off season. Again, having almost like half a decade in. When it comes to like quote unquote feeling uncomfortable, that really does pass. It's not that you're never not comfortable, but it's you just don't view it like that anymore, because your mindset, if you allow it to, if you force it to through growing mentally,
Yeah.
it's your off season's not uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like you accept that body fat's the name of the game and it no longer bothers you because you no longer allow it to bother you. You focus on getting strong in the gym, hitting PRs. Like, bitch, I'm coming for 90 pounds in my mornings. I want that 90 pounds, and I'm even in fucking prep.
Yeah.
But you realize that you could have, a different wardrobe for your growing body to support that. The only time that I've been truly uncomfortable is just for the sheer amount of fucking food that you
Yeah.
have to eat. That
Yeah.
can be uncomfortable, not from a body fat standpoint, but just like a, oh my God, I have to eat again type of standpoint. But like, as far as like, doing that thing where you like are reversing and you're doing ab checks and you're seeing how you're lying. Like you stop with that fucking bullshit because you realize that's needless suffering. So
Yeah.
just a little tidbit for you there. It gets a lot easier because you get better.
Yeah, yeah, you have to stop doing those things because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, you're only making it worse on yourself. Like, it doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't have to be that mentally taxing
Mhm.
as long as you are willing to control that.
Exactly, exactly. We will open up like 5 minutes for questions if people have questions. Um, yeah, dude, like off season, I love it. Like I
Yeah,
really do. It's not that I'm not excited to be in prep because of course I am, but it is one of those things where it's like when you're able to be more than just a bodybuilder because you have the energy to go and do hobbies and to live your life in a way that like isn't so regimented as it is in contest prep, like dude, that's just where you make the most progress because you're not so fucking stressed out about gotta be on prep.
yeah. And that also, I mean, you referenced this in the beginning, but that can make it worse on you. Like, I've had those off seasons too, where it's like I basically it was a continuation of prep, but I was just eating more. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's not doing you any good. It's not doing you any good to not be able to go have date nights and meals off plan. That one date night's not going to make the scale go up 10 pounds. It's not going to ruin your entire off season. And
Yeah.
mentally, it's just going to make things easier on you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That ability to just be human, like that's something that I talk to a lot about with my athletes. Is like I see you as a human being and then as an athlete. But if the human being isn't being taken care of first, if you're neglecting hobbies, not taking timeouts and pauses in your life to like slow down, it's like that's gonna be hell when we transition to contest prep because it's like you're already gonna be so militant that it's gonna be again needless suffering.
Yeah. Did you actually start prep yet, or are you
Yeah,
about
I'm
to?
2 weeks in.
Okay.
It's just like I'm not that person to be like, hey
Yeah.
guys, it's week 2.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I am in prep, but my life is not prep.
Yeah.
Like if you were to ask me like what's new, I would have been like, I signed 6 clients. I have my husband's birthday on Saturday. I'm making him my famous Charleston coconut cake, which is a dupe from a big restaurant down here that like the world knows about. And fucking we have a new show that comes out on Friday that we love watching, and then there's the Super Bowl on Sunday because I love football, even though my team didn't win. So it's like, yeah, I'm in prep, I'm doing the prep things, but my life is so much more than prep.
Yeah. Yeah. You make prep fit into your life, not the other way around.
Yeah, and but unfortunately, with what you just said, that's usually why people have no off season because it's like all
Yeah.
they know is prep because prep is safe. They can close off themselves to the world, and when you have to open yourself up and realize that like life is more than just like bodybuilding on stage, it's like that can be really scary for a lot of people
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I don't think we have any questions, and that is no problem whatsoever. But dude, thank you so much for your time, and I'm glad that this was your first IG live. You did fantastic.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you again for asking me to be on this. This was fun.
You're welcome. And guys, as per requested, this will obviously be uploaded to Instagram as well as YouTube. Eric did one for the team and backlogged like, I don't know, I swear to God, like 25 plus IG live. So you guys can check us out here or also on YouTube. But thank you guys so much this evening. We will catch you next Monday. Peace.
Bye.